What kind of man leaves a woman standing alone on her wedding day? That was the question haunting June Taylor as she stood on the empty train platform in Redemption Springs, Texas, her white wedding dress stirring in the warm evening wind like a ghost of the life she thought she'd have. The sun dipped low, turning the sky red and gold. Tears rolled down June's cheeks, cutting through the careful rouge she had applied that morning. Her trunk sat beside her, everything she owned packed neatly inside, ready for the train that should have carried her toward a new life in San Francisco. But the train had come and gone, and Henry Blackburn was nowhere to be seen. 3 hours. 3 hours of waiting. 3 hours of hope shrinking into heartbreak. She lifted the small watch pinned to her dress. The metal felt cold against her trembling fingers. With each passing minute, she knew the truth more clearly. Henry wasn't late. He wasn't delayed. He wasn't coming. The ticket master stepped out, his hat in hand. "Miss, station's closing soon." June nodded, but her feet stayed rooted. Where could she go? Back home to her parents, who had bragged about her fine match? Back into town where whispers would follow her like dust? She pressed a hand over her shaking chest. Shame burned deeper than the heat of the Texas sun. Hoofbeats broke the silence. June turned as a tall cowboy rode toward the station on a chestnut mare. He slowed, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his worn hat. His clothes were dusty from the trail, his jaw rough with stubble, and his gun belt hung low, mark of a man who knew how to use it. He swung down from the saddle with easy strength and tied his horse to the post. When he lifted his head fully, June saw his eyes, green, steady, and strangely gentle, considering the hard lines of his face. "You waiting on someone, ma'am?" he asked. June swallowed. Not anymore. Something shifted in his eyes as he took in her dress, her trunk, the tears she kept trying to blink away. He removed his hat. "Name's Quentin Hayes. Most folks call me Quinn." "June Taylor," she replied, barely above a whisper. His gaze moved to her trunk. "That all your belongings?" Quote. She nodded. "He didn't show," Quinn said, like he already knew the whole story. "No," June choked out. "He didn't." Quinn's jaw tightened with something like quiet anger. Not at her, but for her. He stepped closer, his voice low and sure. "Whoever he is," he said, "he doesn't deserve you." June lifted her head, surprised. No one had spoken to her with such certainty all day. Quinn held her gaze a long moment, then added in a tone that sent a strange warmth through her chest. "But I might." A startled laugh slipped from June, small but real, the first spark of light in hours. "You don't even know me, Mr. Hayes." "Quinn," he corrected softly, "and you're right, I don't. But I know a man with sense wouldn't leave a woman like you standing alone." He looked around the empty platform. "Do you have anywhere to go?" Quote. June shook her head. "I gave up my room at the boarding house. I was supposed to leave today." Quinn nodded thoughtfully. "My sister, Martha, runs a boarding house at the edge of town. Respectable place. Clean rooms. She could use help with the cooking and accounts. I can take you there if you'd like." June hesitated. He was a stranger, a cowboy, yet something about him felt steady, safe, like a rope thrown to a drowning soul. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. Quinn's voice softened. "Because a real man doesn't walk away from someone in need." He gestured to her trunk. "May I?" June gave a slow nod. Quinn lifted the heavy trunk with one strong sweep and tied it behind his saddle. June looked at her wedding dress and gestured helplessly. "I can't ride like this." "Then we'll walk together," Quinn said simply. "It isn't far." She walked beside him down the dusty street, his horse trailing behind. Lanterns glowed in windows as folks peeked out, whispering as they passed. A bride in white beside a cowboy was bound to stir talk. "Don't mind them," Quinn murmured. "People always talk. Let 'em." June blinked away fresh tears. "I was supposed to be on a train by now. Henry, he promised a new life in California." "Henry Blackburn," she added softly. Recognition flickered in Quinn's eyes. "Blackburn," he repeated slowly. "I know of him." His voice held no friendliness. She didn't ask more. Soon they reached a tall, two-story house with a warm glow in every window. A sign read Hayes Boarding House. Before they could knock, the door swung open, revealing a woman with Quinn's green eyes and a practical, kind face. "Quinn! I wasn't expecting you tonight." Her voice stopped when she saw June in her wedding dress. She understood everything in an instant. "Martha," Quinn said calmly. "This is June Taylor. She needs a room." Martha's expression softened into warm welcome. "Of course. Come in, dear." June stepped inside the cozy parlor, feeling heat on her chilled skin for the first time all day. People stared, curious and sympathetic. Martha guided her to a small room, speaking gently. "We'll find you something to wear. There's time for explanations later." But June paused at the doorway and looked back. Quinn stood behind her, hat in hand, watching her with a steady gaze that made her chest tighten in a new, confusing way. "Thank you," she whispered. He tipped his hat. "Anytime, June." That night, June lay on the narrow bed and touched the place on her finger where the diamond ring had once felt like a promise. Now it felt like a warning. But as her eyes drifted closed, it wasn't Henry's face she saw. It was Quinn's green eyes and the quiet strength in his voice when he'd said, "He doesn't deserve you, but I might." June woke early the next morning, unsure if it was the sunlight through the small window or the weight of yesterday pressing on her chest that pulled her from sleep. For a long moment she simply lay still, listening to the quiet sounds of the boarding house coming to life. Pots clinking in the kitchen, soft footsteps on the stairs, a rooster crowing in the distance. Her heart still ached, but the crushing shame of the train station felt a little less sharp. Martha had left a simple blue dress folded neatly on the chair beside the bed. June changed into it, smoothing the fabric with trembling hands. She barely recognized herself without the heavy wedding gown, without the tangled flowers that had once crowned her hair. A knock sounded. "Breakfast is ready, dear," Martha called gently. "Come whenever you're ready." June took a deep breath and forced her feet to move. In the dining room, the long wooden table was already filled with people. They all paused when she entered. Not rudely, but in that curious way small towns always watched newcomers. June braced herself. "There you are," Martha said cheerfully, placing a warm plate in front of her. "Sit, eat. You look like you could use a good meal." June murmured a thank you and slid into the seat beside an older woman who gave her a kind smile, as though welcoming her without a single question. Across the table, Quinn looked up. He must have come in from the ranch early because his hair was damp from washing, and he'd changed into a clean shirt. The bruise from his run-in with the bank guard wasn't there yet, not today, but worry was already written in those green eyes as he watched her carefully. "You sleeping all right?" he asked softly. June nodded. "Better than I expected." Martha cleared her throat with a knowing glance. "Quinn, doesn't your horse need checking?" "That animal of yours needs more attention than a newborn calf." Quinn smirked just a little. "Martha, you're the only one who thinks Daisy is delicate." "Daisy is delicate? You're just stubborn." June hid a small smile behind her cup. Their bickering felt warm, familiar, something she hadn't realized she needed until now. When breakfast ended and Martha began clearing dishes, June insisted on helping. She needed something to keep her hands busy, something to remind her she wasn't useless. "You don't need to do that," Martha told her gently. "I want to," June replied. So Martha allowed it, guiding her through the morning chores, and June found herself relaxing more each minute, comfort settling into her bones as she scrubbed, sorted, and swept. As the morning settled, Martha pulled a ledger from a drawer. "We balance accounts on Sundays usually, but if you're good with numbers like you said, I could use help any time." Quote, June opened the ledger and scanned the pages. In moments, her mind slipped naturally into the rhythm of calculations in neat columns. Her father had taught her this work. Henry had never cared about it. But here, her skill mattered. "You're good at this," Martha said with clear relief. June felt a small spark of pride. "Thank you." Before she could say more, a voice called from the doorway. "Miss Taylor?" June turned. It was the seamstress from the night before. The one who'd stared at her on the train platform. The one who liked gossip far too much. "Oh," June said politely. "Good afternoon, Miss Winters." Miss Winters gave a sympathetic but far too eager smile. "I just came to check on you." "Heard you were staying here." She lowered her voice. "The whole town is talking about Henry Blackburn running off with that girl from Silver Creek." June stiffened. "I don't know anything about that." "Well," Miss Winters continued, leaning closer, "I heard he'd been seeing her for months." June's stomach twisted. Before the seamstress could continue, a deep voice cut through the tension. "Miss Winters," Quinn said from behind her, "Mrs. Peterson needs help with alterations. She's been asking for you." Miss Winters paled slightly. "Oh, yes, I'll go now." She dipped her head and hurried off. Quinn stepped into the room, his gaze settling on June. "You all right?" June shook her head. "Is it true? About Henry and a woman from Silver Creek?" Quinn exhaled slowly. "There've been rumors, but no one knew for certain. And now the whole town thinks I was too blind to see," June whispered. "They're wrong," Quinn said firmly. "What Henry did is on him, not on you." June lifted her eyes to his and for a moment felt steady for the first time all day. "Thank you," she whispered. They walked into town together after lunch. Quinn had errands. Martha said fresh air would do June good. So they walked side by side down the dusty street. June still adjusting to life without a fiancé, and with a cowboy instead quietly guiding her through the crowd. As they neared the bank, June's heart sped up. The building was large, proud, and built of brick that seemed colder than everything around it. Quinn felt her tense. "You don't have to pass by if you don't want to." "I want to," June said. "I need to." But she wasn't prepared for the voice that called out behind her. "Miss Taylor." She turned. Josiah Blackburn, Henry's father, stood on the steps of the bank, tall, stern, eyes like cold steel. He looked at June as if she were the one who'd done something shameful. "Mr. Blackburn," June managed. "We need to discuss the wedding expenses," he said stiffly. June froze. "What?" "You and my son wasted considerable funds." Gasps rose from townsfolk nearby. Quinn stepped forward at once. "That's enough," he said, voice dark as a storm. "You'll not speak to her that way." Josiah Blackburn's gaze shifted to Quinn with open disdain. "This is none of your concern, Hayes." "It is," Quinn replied, standing closer to June. "You don't harass a lady in public and get away with it." Blackburn's jaw clenched, but something in Quinn's stance made him back off. Finally, the banker tipped his hat stiffly. "This isn't over," he said to June, then walked inside. June's knees trembled. "You handled that with more grace than he deserved," Quinn said gently. June tried to breathe evenly. "I didn't expect that." "No one expects cruelty to walk up and speak like a friend," Quinn murmured. "Come on, let's get you away from here." That evening, after Martha fussed over her and the boarders tried to cheer her, June stepped onto the porch alone, letting the cool air settle her thoughts. She didn't hear Quinn approach until he spoke. "You did well today." June turned to him, feeling her heart twist in new ways. "I felt like a fool." "You were brave," Quinn corrected. "Most folks would have run home crying, but you stood your ground." She looked up at him. His green eyes softened in the fading light. "Would you like to come to the church social this Saturday?" he asked gently. "Martha brings all her boarders. It might help you feel part of things again." June hesitated, but only for a moment. "Yes," she said softly, "I'd like that." Quote. A small smile touched Quinn's lips. "Good. I'll look for you." June felt warmth spread across her chest, stronger than fear, stronger than shame. Maybe, just maybe, the worst day of her life had led her exactly where she needed to be. The church social arrived on a warm Texas evening, the kind where lantern light glowed soft and golden across the yard. June stood at the edge of the gathering, her hands trembling only a little as families greeted one another. Children raced between wagons and music drifted through the air. She wasn't the abandoned bride tonight. She wasn't the girl left at a train station. She was June Taylor, standing among people who were slowly becoming part of her new life. Martha squeezed her hand. "You look lovely, dear, and don't you worry. Everything will be just fine." Before June could answer, a familiar deep voice spoke behind her. "Evening, Miss Taylor." She turned. Quinn Hayes stood a few steps away, his dark hair combed neatly, his clean shirt crisp in the lantern glow. He held his hat in his hands, but his green eyes warmed when they met hers. "Good evening," June said, unable to stop the small smile that rose to her lips. "You're easy to spot," he said. "Brightest thing here." Her face heated at the unexpected compliment. Martha gave Quinn a pointed look and murmured, "I think I see a friend over there," before walking off. Far too quickly to be casual. Quinn chuckled softly. She's not one for subtlety. "No," June agreed, feeling a flutter in her chest. They walked together toward the tables of pie and stew, past curious glances and whispered gossip, but the whispers didn't sting as sharply tonight, not with Quinn walking steady beside her. Then a hush fell. Josiah Blackburn stood only a few steps away, hands clasped behind his back, his stern gaze fixed on June. Her stomach twisted. "Miss Taylor," he said coldly. A word. Before June could respond, Quinn stepped between them with controlled calm. "That's enough, Blackburn." Josiah's lips thinned. "I don't believe I addressed you." Quote, "You sure didn't," Quinn said, his voice even but hard. "But I'm answering anyway." A crowd formed, drawn by tension like bees to honey. "This is not the place," June whispered, her heart pounding. Josiah ignored her. "You've caused enough trouble. My son has left town in disgrace because of you." Quinn's jaw flexed. "Your son left town because he ran away from responsibility." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Josiah glared. "Mind your tongue, Hayes." Quinn didn't back down. "Then learn to mind yours around a lady." For a long moment, June feared Josiah would lash out, but the older man swallowed hard, straightened his coat, and walked off stiffly, more wounded pride than victory. June let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want a scene." "That wasn't your doing," Quinn said gently. "You stood tall. You handled it better than some men would." He offered her his arm. "Come on, let's give them something else to stare at." She hesitated. "What do you mean?" Quinn nodded toward the people gathering for a dance. "If you'll do me the honor?" Quote, June placed her hand in his, her breath catching as warmth spread through her. They joined the dancers, moving in slow circles beneath the lanterns. Quinn's hands rested lightly at her waist, guiding her with ease. June's heartbeat steadied as she let herself lean into the moment. "You're braver than you know," Quinn murmured. June looked up at him. "I don't feel brave." "You are," he said. "You came to town alone. You stood up to Blackburn. And you walked into this social with your head high." She swallowed the lump forming in her throat. "You've been very kind to me, Quinn." "I'm not kind," he said softly. "Not unless I want to be." Their eyes met, and something warm and steady passed between them, something that made June's breath hitch. But then Martha hurried over, breathless and concerned. "Mrs. Wilson isn't feeling well. We need to go." The moment broke. Quinn helped escort the boarding house group back through the dark streets. They got Mrs. Wilson settled safely inside before Quinn stepped out onto the porch with June. The night was quiet except for the distant call of crickets. "I'm sorry the evening ended early," June said softly. "I'm not," Quinn replied. "I got exactly what I hoped for." "What's that?" He looked at her with a gentleness that undid something inside her. "You, standing tall, smiling again." June felt her chest tighten at the sincerity in his voice. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted. "Then let's figure it out together," Quinn said, "one day at a time." He reached for her hand, slow enough for her to pull away if she wished. She didn't. His fingers brushed hers, steady and warm. "June," he said quietly, "I meant what I told you that first day. A man who leaves a woman standing alone doesn't deserve her. His thumb brushed gently over her knuckles. But I might. June's breath trembled as she stepped closer, the porch lantern casting soft light across his strong features. "And what if," she whispered, "I think you already do?" Quinn's eyes softened in a way that made the whole world feel still. "I'd be honored," he whispered back. Their hands remained clasped. The night air pressed warm around them, and for the first time since the train never came, June felt her heart settle, like a bird finding the branch it was meant to land on. "Good night, June," Quinn said softly. "Good night, Quinn." As he walked down the quiet street, June stayed on the porch watching until he disappeared into the night. And in her heart, she knew with quiet certainty that the life she had imagined with Henry was never meant to be. The path she stood on now, this unexpected, healing, hopeful path, began with a cowboy who saw her worth before she could see it herself. For the first time since everything fell apart, June looked toward tomorrow with a soft, steady hope.